Hi, everyone. This is Noreen Chase, Community Manager of the SocialBiz User Group. Joining me today is Jonathan Stark, a mobile strategy consultant who helps retail brands thrive in the post-PC era. Jonathan is the author of 3 books on mobile and web technologies, web development, actually. Most notably, O'Reilly's Building iPhone Apps with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, which is available in 7 languages. Jonathan is a keynote speaker at the upcoming Future Insights Live conference, running from June 1st through the 4th in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's his first time there. So because of that, Jonathan is going to be talking to me today about his sessions at Future Insights Live. Let's get started. Hi, Jonathan. How are you today?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. And thank you so much for joining me today for this interview.
My pleasure.
Okay, let's get started. So I see on futureinsightslive.com you have 2 sessions, an all-day workshop on June 1st, and you're the keynote speaker on June 2nd. I'd like to start with the workshop, and it's called Mobile First Product Strategy for Product Designers. So do you find people get more value out of a workshop than a regular presentation?
In general, yes. It does depend a little bit on who you're talking to, but I think workshops are more valuable for folks who are closer to the customer or closer to the product that they're making. Then you have folks on the other end of the spectrum, like C-suite people who tend to prefer more summarized, high-level insight type of format because they just, I'll do a half-day seminar for people like that, and you start losing them by the end of the second hour because they just got too much going on. But this will be perfect for folks, future insight folks.
So what will they be learning specifically in this workshop, and is there a limit to the number of people that can attend the workshop?
There's not really a limit. I mean, I don't know how big the room is, but it would be nice to have somewhere between 20 and 200 people, because if you go with fewer people than that, there might not be enough diversity of experience, for example. Mm-hmm. And if you have more than 200, it gets hard to address everybody's questions, and I like to make sure to get to as many questions as I possibly can to tailor the material straight to the people who are there, and they can get actionable advice out of it. But your first question was what will they be learning? I mean, in a nutshell, if I was going to summarize it, I would say to think beyond apps and embrace the entire phone experience. And in the course of going through that whole topic and making the case for it, and helping people think bigger, think outside of apps, I start off with a summary of the mobile landscape, which is mind-blowing. Everybody listening probably realizes that mobile is huge. They're probably listening to this on their phone right now. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the numbers, it is jaw-dropping what a change is basically. Like this tsunami is just washing over us, and it's just the beginning. So first we start off with this sort of big picture thing, and we look at examples of how mobile is changing society and different ways that, different technologies that it's enabling, which is a very interesting way to look at it. And then how some of these emerging trends are going to affect the future of mobile first, or what even mobile first means. When you start having things like smartwatches and connected cars and smart TVs, how does the watch fit into that picture? How does the phone fit into that picture? And what does it mean to be mobile first when you've got this sort of constellation of devices? And then we'll get into a high-level strategic framework for how to start transitioning to a mobile first, or what I might even prefer to call a future-friendly mindset. With some very specific steps, 3 very specific steps that people will be able to implement today or start implementing today that will help them with whatever work they're doing today, because it's all about flexibility and context independence. So these are things that will help people today, but they'll also lay the groundwork for an architecture for the future of their organization that will make it a lot easier to, for example, respond quickly to changes in the marketplace, or quickly roll out a new product idea, act on a new idea from, the CMO or the CIO or CEO.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so like I said, that one is on June 1st. Now on June 2nd, you're the keynote speaker. And I love the title of your keynote address. The browser is dead, long live the web. So is this also, this keynote, is it about the proliferation of mobile in the workplace and in society?
Yep. Well, that's the underlying premise. That's sort of the jumping off point. But the more surface level of the talk, what I'm actually going to be discussing is more about that constellation of things that I just mentioned that mobile enables, and what it's going to mean for people who work on the web to need to design across these devices and for more and more devices that don't even have a web browser. And what does that mean? How do we continue to grow our businesses and our skills and our job and our craft when we don't necessarily always think about the browser anymore? I'm sure a lot of people listening to this remember or still laugh at jokes about IE6 and how much we used to have to think about a specific browser. And that's becoming less and less of an issue, and it's more of an issue to think about how do we design this content or product or service so that it creates a good user experience on something that doesn't even have a screen, maybe.
Interesting. So in your job as a consultant, how difficult is it to convince business leaders to go mobile?
It's funny. It's easy to convince them that it's critical and that they should do it, but it's really hard to convince them to do anything meaningful about it.
Wow, really?
The bigger the organization is, the more likely it is that they are weighed down by legacy architecture, legacy systems, like old desktop style information systems.
Right.
But also a lot of the older organizations, and I specifically do a lot of retail and other customer-facing, consumer-facing brands. It's very common to find that their organization is actually set up in a way that prevents them from being good at mobile. You wouldn't think the organizational hierarchy would matter that much, but it really does, because if you get a situation where, the classic case these days is that this chief marketing officer and the chief information officer, or the CIO or the CTO, they basically are fighting over this football of mobile. Like the CMO is going out and hiring outside firms to create apps to put in the app store, but so they're constantly after the CIO to get resources to build back-end APIs to support those apps. And the CIO doesn't want to do it because the sort of long-suffering IT department has a year backlog of stuff that they can't even get to. So it turns into a lot of friction, and it's not easy to change. So everybody, I'll be giving a presentation to a bunch of upper-level executives, and everybody be nodding along with me. But then 6 months later, I can see that they've done nothing obvious because, you can imagine it means changing job titles. It means changing how people are financially incentivized, how people are bonused. This is a big change to switch to and basically an always on, anytime, anywhere consumption of data and services. So that's, back in the desktop days, I'm old enough to remember, maybe not everyone is, that it used to be that the IT department basically handled back of house stuff, and there was no customer-facing IT, really. I mean, maybe there'd be a POS in a retail store, but there certainly wasn't this proliferation of apps or experiences across devices. I mean, Pizza Hut announced yesterday that they have or Domino's announced that they have a tweet to order a pizza.
No kidding,
which is clearly something that it sounds like something to me that the marketing department dreamed up, but I guarantee you that it needs a lot of involvement from IT.
Right, and they may not have that back-end structure support in place to function.
Right, I agree. I mean, most people definitely don't. Domino's appears to be very, very cutting edge with, they've got apps for Pebble. You can watch your pizza come to your house on your watch, and I mean, they seem to be very forward-facing, but I've given presentations to big international restaurant chains, and people are just shaking their heads like, how are we ever going to get there from here?
And that's what you said earlier in answering this question is, it's a big change. And the word I use, or that I've been hearing and seeing a lot, reading a lot, is disruptive. It's a disruptive change. And these changes seem to be coming more frequently at an accelerated pace. So, mobile and cloud has been, this disruptive technology in the past few years. What's going to be, 3, 4, 5 years from now, in your opinion, what do you see will be the next disruptive technology that will have this kind of impact?
Right. I mean, you know what they say, predictions are hard, especially about the future. But,
it's always fun to guess, though.
right. And I do a podcast with a friend called Terrifying Robot Dog, where we talk about nothing but how technology is going to change our lives in the future. So I think about this all the time. And, there's the list of things is just unbelievable. Self-driving cars, off-the-grid energy, 3D printing, drones, robotics. I mean, there's just like no end to it. Never mind the genetic stuff that I can't even read that stuff. I get too freaked out. But of all of the ones that I've personally experienced, and people are going to probably write me off as a lunatic when I say this, but the virtual reality headsets are compelling. So things like Oculus Rift, Samsung VR, even Google Cardboard. If people want to play with this, you can, for $10, you can get a Google Cardboard virtual reality headset that you just stick an Android phone in. And it is shocking. And let me just tell you a quick story about why I think this is going to catch on.
Sure.
I have a 5-year-old, and when I got my first version of the Google Cardboard, I was curious. I basically, he's my guinea pig for everything. I want to see, if this is cool or not cool. Like, he couldn't stand Google Glass. He wouldn't even put it on. Oh. But he tried the cardboard thing. It looks like a ViewMaster. If you're, back in the day like me, remember the ViewMasters. And you sort of look into it like it's binoculars, but you can only see a phone with these sort of two almost identical images in it. So it gives you this illusion of depth. And he played with that thing for as long as I would let him. And, so for at least 10 minutes he was in it, and you can watch, it's like you're inside of this 360-degree sphere of, in this case, a cartoon. It's not interactive, but you can look in any direction inside of the cartoon.
Wow.
So you can watch what's happening behind you, and the people who created the cartoon had, you could watch it 10 times and look in a different place every time and see different action. And when he took it off, when we were finally done with it, a little bit later he looked at me and he was like, "Dad, can I go back in that?" And I got chills. I was like, he didn't say, "Can I go online? Can I use that? Can I," like he does with the iPad or something. He was like, "I want to go back in that."
Wow.
And it was shocking. It was also interesting to note that he immediately understood how to use it. I didn't have to tell him anything. Right. So, Facebook bought Oculus Rift, which is the leading technology here. Samsung has one, Sony has one, Microsoft has one, everybody has one. And once, it'll go to gamers first, and you'll have one of these things laying around the house if you're a gamer or you have a kid that's a gamer. And you're going to try it on to look at somebody's 3D panoramic vacation pictures. Wow. And you're going to say, "Wow, what an experience." You're going to put it on, you're going to look at Street View or their new Business View, where you can go inside of a business. And you're going to get hooked. This is an amazing experience that is far better than this 2D screens we're all used to.
It reminds me, the geek in me is going to come out now. It just reminds me of the hologram deck on Star Trek Next Generation. Mm-hmm. That is really cool. So, Jonathan, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining me.
My pleasure.
Thank you. If you have questions about the FI Live Conference to our listeners, you can go to the website futureinsightslive.com or follow them on Twitter at future_insights. Jonathan, you can find him on his website, jonathanstark.com, on his YouTube channel or LinkedIn channel, both Jonathan Stark, and also on Twitter at Jonathan Stark, all one word. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for